So let's make a start then. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be in the world. And of course, whether you're watching live or catching up with this session on YouTube, welcome once again to another FIPP webinar. We started our webinar series in 2021 with a look last week at what smart companies are doing to prepare for the recovery. And for today's session, we're going to do a deeper dive into a topic relating to one of the key goals of media businesses today, which is, of course, building a direct transactional relationship with the consumer, in this case via e-commerce. My guest from Tipsa, who I'll introduce in a moment, joined us in one of our very first webinars last year. The video for that session has proven to be one of the most popular on our channel, so we're delighted to welcome him back to tell us more about this important subject in a moment. And today's webinar is focused on two things: the launch of our new report called The State of Content and Commerce. I'll show you a copy of it here. This is an important new white paper that we've produced in collaboration and partnership with Tipsa, looking at e-commerce in the round and pulling out some of the key themes that are emerging from this business area. There's a link to download the report in the chat box. Do take a moment to read it. We're sure that you'll find it very useful. Secondly, we're going to be considering in this session how publishers can preserve the integrity of their editorial operations in the face of the greater commercial opportunity presented by content that is directly shoppable. But before we dive into this subject, let me just run through some quick housekeeping messages. As ever, we want these sessions to be as interactive as possible, so please make use of the Q&A button, which you can find at the bottom of your screen, to ask questions. You can also upvote other people's questions just to show the ones that you're interested in hearing answers to, and we'll be keeping an eye on that throughout the event and putting your questions to our guest as we go along. A reminder also that today's webinar is being recorded, as are all our webinars. You can watch the recording of this session as well as catch up on any others that you might have missed on our YouTube channel, which is at youtube.com/FIPPworld. A reminder also that if you haven't already signed up for our newsletter, please do so. The link is in the chat. It's absolutely the best way to keep abreast of the latest industry news, features and reports, as well as hearing about future webinars and other FIPP events. We have a renewed focus on content this year, and with that in mind, the newsletter really is your way to make sure that you don't miss out on any of the great things that we're publishing over the coming months. One final request: we are currently doing a survey of our audience to understand what subjects you'd like us to cover in future. The link to the survey is in the chat. It will only take you 5 minutes to fill in. You can do it while you're listening to us talk about e-commerce. Thank you very much in advance for taking the time to share your views with us. They really will help us to direct the future of our content output over the course of the coming year. I think that's about enough from me. It's time to introduce my guest for today. Tipsa is one of the pioneers in the emerging e-commerce technology space with a growing number of partners across the world. And joining us today to tell us more about Tipsa and about this report is their founder and CSO, Axel Wolrath. Welcome, Axel.
Thank you so much, James.
Good to have you with us again.
Glad to be back.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
So let me start by asking you. We talked about the report. I'm just going to show the cover for everybody to have a look at there. The State of Content and Commerce, which is this new report that we've produced together. Just tell us a little bit about what motivated you to produce this report.
Yeah. We've been stubbornly pushing through for the last 10 years in what could be really considered a green field of opportunities. And this has rendered us quite a few answers, but possibly even more questions. And I think that we're constantly seeking more answers to the questions. And there is, in fact, very little analysis on this subject around. And that's exactly what we're after. And we think that, creating market knowledge, creating knowledge for ourselves, of course, and eventually, but that's for others to judge, we will probably become one of the thought leaders, at least within the space. So I would say we're kind of concerned about the current economical state of publishing in general. But also we wish to shed light on the opportunities, obviously build an interesting business and a discussion around this topic. And finally, it's obvious that we promote content as an important media for important messages. So I guess that's why we're here.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we've got quite a number of different areas to cover in this report. One of them is the core topic of today, which is journalistic integrity, which we're going to come on to in a moment. But before that, I want to just talk about some of the other aspects of the report. I'd like to explore revenue diversification. I think this is a really critical aspect of today's media environment. It's something that every media business is focused on. But I can imagine that there will be many viewers and many listeners out there watching this and saying to themselves, well, hang on, I've got a paywall, I've got a paid content strategy. Isn't that enough? What do I need e-commerce for?
I think that's an interesting topic, and I do agree. Paywall is a good thing, but paywall is also, in many cases at least, it's kind of a statement saying that, hey, I'm the only media that you're going to need based on the price that I am going to charge you. I'm going to charge you for $600 euros a year to take part of my content. Most normal media consumers can't afford that kind of amount, at least not paying it to multiple medias. So that sort of disqualifies a bit, at least, of the paywalls as they look today. But I don't say that paywall is, paywall is not something that we should get rid of. Maybe on the contrary, some of our users even put the commercial content behind the paywall as a premium service, because that's where it's sort of bound to be. But what we'd like to say is really that diversification is the safe way of moving forward from here. And it's basically about the saying, don't put all the eggs in one basket. We have to diversify. We have to look at different revenue alternatives. And even though we're sometimes a bit skeptic with initiatives that include traditional ad technology driving readers off sites and so on, but we still coexist with those kinds of initiatives, even within the sort of very successful publishing collaborations that we run. So diversification is really key to it, and keep the paywall, but make sure that it serves its purposes. And if you succeed in running a very successful content commerce business, then you probably wouldn't want to keep it behind the paywall, because you want to make it as accessible as possible.
Yeah, you need that volume of traffic, don't you, to drive conversion and therefore drive revenue. But I think it's also interesting that we mustn't fall into the trap as the industry of substituting reliance on advertising for reliance on the paywall, because then we're not diversifying, we're merely swapping. And I guess one of the points we're trying to make here is that if you're truly going to be diverse, you have to have 4 or 5 different revenue streams. And e-commerce can be one of those. And I guess what you're saying as well, that it is possible to run a paywall strategy and an e-commerce strategy at the same time. Is that right?
Definitely. And as I mentioned, that some of our customers do treat the content commerce as the premium content. And but again, once you come to a point where your foremost offering is the accessibility of products or the opportunity to interact deeper and so on, then it's probably not a good idea putting it behind the paywall. But it can truly be considered the premium content. And of course, for those using content commerce behind the paywall, the bigger question there is basically, is this the primary loyalty driver, or the loyalty service, or the loyalty perk, basically?
Yeah.
But anyway, I think that shoppable content or content commerce is a way of enhancing the service level, and I think this is very likely where our discussion today is going to end up. That service level is really the premium feature of the future if we look at publishing, and to be able to service your customers on a high and quality level, you have to match your offerings, your commercial offering, with your content offering.
Yeah, and we're going to come on to that customer experience point in a minute, and the kind of getting the clicks down to as few as possible. But before we do that, I want to talk through something we mentioned in the report, which is this idea that there are 3 different use cases for e-commerce. I'm going to put them up on screen in a moment, and I wonder if you could just talk us through them. For those who are watching, if you look in the top right-hand corner of your screen, you'll see the view button. If you click that and go on gallery view, you'll be able to see both the slides and Axel as he talks us through them. So I'm going to do my fancy Star Wars style wipe and show these 3 different use cases for e-commerce. And Axel, if you can just talk us through these.
Thank you. Yeah. So basically, the foundations of e-commerce, as we, normally operated within the publishing context, it is around embedded e-commerce, content commerce, and reader loyalty. Then there are quite a few other types of applications that could be a topic for a more in-depth question. But if we generalize, the embedded e-commerce is basically about the opportunity to add e-commerce as an accessibility factor, as an extra interactions factor among the already produced content. And the most common way of doing that is basically look at the pieces of content where there could be a commercial match with a product, and then match it with a product and make that piece of content interactable in a way that you can basically buy the product. Simple as that. When it comes to content commerce, that's the maybe less generalistic approach, but more targeted approach of actually producing content based on the kind of products that you want to sell, or the kind of products that you can sell. So this is basically about flipping the way of monetizing media in the sort of reversed direction. You decide what you want to sell first, and then you produce the content around it. And the decision of what you want to sell, well, it's simply curation. You have to find the products that appeal to your audience, that brings high relevance, that's a good deal price-wise to the audience, and that sort of matches your publishing brand. So we often talk about that as product first, and it's a bit of an upside down flip versus the way that media is traditionally monetized. Traditionally you make content first, and then you see if there's a way of monetizing it, just as we do in the embedded commerce case. But with content commerce, it's kind of the other way around, I'd say. And then finally, the reader loyalty part. And the reader loyalty part can come in many shapes. But I think one of the more interesting and intriguing ones is really about using reader loyalty, using content commerce with heavily discounted products to give subscribers extra value to the subscription, basically. So imagine someone pays you 400 euros a year to access your content. If we can give them an offering to buy a product that is discounted by, let's say, 200 euros, make it radical. It's a bicycle, it's a stove, it's a, whatever. Then the experience is that I'm actually saving 200 euros. My subscriptions is, becoming fairly cheap in view of this. I'm going to stay another year. So those are three very common examples of the way that content commerce is being operated today.
So that last point is interesting because that's commerce as a loyalty driver and almost building on this idea of the audience being a club or a community and rewarding that community by offering them discounts. Is that right?
Yeah, in a way. It's not necessarily only discount driven. It cannot just as well be driven by product discovery, this new product or this very unique product or this very limited edition product. I think among the examples that we've had in the past, some are high value products like electrical bicycles. I think we mentioned in our last webinar has been a truly interesting product for us because it's a relatively new phenomena. It speaks very well with this middle-aged, audience that I belong to myself, and the traditional subscribers of, for instance, news media, the ones that they're used to getting their paper home every morning, studying it by the breakfast table, as they also tend to move into consuming the media digitally rather than physically, they're still asked to pay the same subscription fees, or roughly the same subscription fees. We can bring them new values, and so electrical bicycles is one thing. The recommended retail price would be 1,500 euros. We can sell it if we can sell it for 1,200 euros. The win is there. The other case is that, skip the discount. Let's look at limited pieces of art, for instance, or limited pieces of something else, books, for instance, first edition of something, first access to something, etc. And in a less COVID-like world, a play at the theater, movie tickets, a train trip somewhere, basically.
Something that speaks to the consumer's lifestyle and
exclusive and curated. Yeah,
fantastic. Well, look, a reminder, everybody, that you can see more of those use cases and more about the different types of e-commerce and the different use cases that we've just spoken about in the report, which you can download there in that link on the right-hand side. Now, Tipsa, you're a great believer that commerce and the commerce experience needs to be embedded in the content and not separate from it. We've just talked about that. Just tell us a little bit more about why that is the case. What is the benefit of doing that?
No, I think that the way that we're used to see media is really that there is a content part and there is a commercial part. The commercial part is basically all the, forgive me, crap surrounding the content part. I'm sorry about that. All you in the ad industry. And I think the way that it's so efficiently separated today makes us, of course, I mean, banner blindness is not a new phenomenon. It's been talked about for the past 20 years. But the concept here is that we're, as publishers, now I'm not a publisher, but I guess I feel with publishers, but as publishers, you kind of attend to that tiny piece that's left when you sort of take the commercial stuff away. And that is not utilizing your full digital real estate. And secondly, what do you think the readers do? The readers don't focus on that stuff surrounding the sort of the content, the core of the reason for the visit. They want to sort of engulf, what do you say, indulge themselves in the content. That's where they want to be. They probably came organically, and they came with a reason and a purpose to study that content, to consume more of it. And we need to make sure that our commercial offerings and the stuff we make money off is a part of that. It cannot be separate. It's ridiculous that it is separate. Actually, it has to be the same product, more or less. So if we sort of have come that far, then it's about relevance. It's about seamlessness. It's about accessibilities. It's about fewer clicks. It's about not disturbing the consumer experience. And all in all, it's a better experience for the reader without flooding their browsers with basically unsolicited ads.
I guess it's at a time as well when you've captured the reader's attention. If they're reading the content, their attention is focused on that content. You've got the opportunity to transact with them. As you say, the distraction of the advertising around the page is that it's a distraction. It's not the thing that they're focused on. So embedding the content, the commerce in the content, is taking advantage of where the reader's attention is at the time.
Yeah, and taking advantage of the fact that we can give them a better service.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a great phrase in the report which is about achieving independence in e-commerce. Now, that's not normally something we think about e-commerce having independence, but this is linked to the idea of moving from the affiliate model to an embedded model. How is that possible in practical terms?
I think that on a general level, the whole market wants to go upstream. I think is a very common word. You basically want to move closer to the transaction. I don't know if it's down or upstream, actually, if you think of it, but it's you want to move closer to the transaction by sort of continuing working with the old ad model, which is about interrupting journeys, which is about moving the focus of the reader, which is about, well, actually moving the reader out of context to monetize on it. We are not moving upstream. We're sort of accepting to be the floodgate, or not even the floodgate, just being the stream where people pass by. And it dilutes our values as publishers. But if we decide to go sort of the other way and talk about the value proposition of content commerce, it's about interacting with the consumer or the reader when the consumer or reader wants to interact, and the consumer or reader is ready to interact. And when is a consumer ready to interact? Well, when the topic is relevant. So if I all of a sudden, go off and start talking about lunch, whatever, right now, I'm becoming less relevant. But if I were here, start talking about, how do you make this happen, or what's the best practice, or so on, we're relevant. Preferably, I would hand out the sign up form here to you right now, James. So come on, let's do this. I'll help you. And it's about being relevant here and now on the same topic. Because the day you start pushing crap, then you're going to destroy your relevance, and then you're ultimately going to destroy your own brand. So I mean, content commerce is a powerful tool, and used without caution, it can be just as dangerous as it can be sort of beneficial to consumers and or readers and publishers.
Yeah, and I think that's the key point, isn't it? The crucial benefit here is that it can be a service to the reader, or should be a service to the reader. Fantastic. Let's move on to one of the core sections of the report, which is kind of the main purpose of today's session, which is the potential conflict between a publisher's commercial ambitions and their journalistic integrity, or the integrity of their content. Firstly, can you describe the issues around combining effective independent journalism with this monetization strategy?
I think this is one of our favorite topics lately, and we have all heard the saying "church and state," and church and state is sort of the olden day issue, and in these days it's basically about who produces the commercial content and who produces the unbiased independent content. And ultimately, as we see it today, or as far as the industry or our part of the industry has gone today, the people producing the commercial content or the content commerce are most commonly not the same as the people producing the independent sort of news coverage or whatever that is. These are most commonly new teams shaped by the new commercial needs. So this means that, I think within almost all of the publishers that we work with, and we work with a good part of the bigger media houses in Europe, there is not a single publisher that does not operate a commercial or reader monetization team or e-commerce team or something in that area. So this means that most organizations, they have separate rule books, they have separate methods for the content creation versus the content commerce creation, and so this is being taken care of in a way, I would say. And the medias normally they are super worried about the church and state separation. They're super anxious about sort of stepping over that line. So there's a lot of caution basically in taking on this. Not to mention the legal sort of legal advisors of the media companies or legal counsels. They're even more cautious about this. But to the consumers, in the end, as long as we're highly transparent, this is much less of an issue to consumers than it is to media, as long as we're transparent, and of course highly service-minded.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's right, and we put it up there on the screen. Be transparent, be clear about what is commercial. So, I mean, this was the same debate that we had about native advertising, and you're right, that church and state element went away. How can those companies ensure that journalism teams are not influenced by that commercial pressure, though? Do you think it's the case that journalists themselves are the best people to tell you when they're being pressured?
It's a good question. I think they have to be super cautious about that. And they, as a media, you must not, under any circumstance, confuse journalistic content with commercial content. That will ultimately harm you. Again, it comes down to transparency. I think that though, looking upon the kind of methods that we use, I mean, the loyalty driver stuff it's connected to the concept of the content, but not really to the content in itself. Whereas the content commerce, as we propose it with product first and so on, that's very much like content and commerce. The content is written to run the commerce basically, and we can be super transparent about it. When it comes to embedded commerce, however, when the example with a cookbook and basically this is an old article or old review of a cookbook with probably a few years old. All of a sudden you can buy and access that cookbook. Then it's another level of transparency that is needed. Well, first of all, we have sort of already protected ourselves because the original review of the cookbook was written without commercialization in mind whatsoever. So we're sort of safeguarded in that way. And then it basically comes down to transparency and signposting that this is our commercial offering to you that we think is very relevant to this book or the review of the book that you're reading.
Yeah, absolutely. So what about the reader? I mean, one of the important things is making sure that the reader doesn't confuse this. How can we signal to them that this is a commercial interaction mixed in with the journalism?
And there's a fun story, or a fun story. It's basically stories from the real life of ours, at least, that almost always, and especially in the early days of Tips, or when we started proposing that you should embed e-commerce as part of your offering, the publisher, the sort of the role of the publisher, and quite commonly the legal people of our counterparts or media customers, they were super worried about what we were about to introduce on this like the content real estate of the platforms. And they were saying that you have to put this with this light pink or light yellow, whatever backplate that distinguishes it, has to be a different font, has to be, this is an advertisement in collaboration with yada yada, and it has to be so clear that it is not confused with the content. And then you could go that, okay, but that's going to put us in the ad corner. Or you can say that, yes, that's a brilliant idea, but let's not stay with that. Let's not say that this is an ad. Let's tell it like it is. This is e-commerce. Hey, This is the store. Welcome in. Do your shopping here. This is where we service you. This is where we allow you to buy the stuff that you sort of think is relevant. So then we're still in the concept of signposting what we do and being ultra transparent about it, but let's be clear and say what it is rather than saying that this is an ad. Put it with the rest of the ads. Yeah. So instead of for the publishers to sort of distance themselves from the commercial message here, they're more like embracing it, and they can even be so clear as to say that this is our way of making money to be able to keep providing you with the content that you come here to read.
Yeah, and we've got some examples here from customers of yours. Just talk us through these.
Yeah, this is really quite simple, and I think that this is probably best viewed in comparison with the way that publishing platforms used to look in the past. The whole idea is basically here that all of these fairly well-known or very well-known media brands, they have something called shop now these days, or shops or offers. So essentially, this is I think the clearest way of signposting that now we're offering you something new. We're no longer just the content platform that uses advertising to sort of capitalize on you. We offer you something else. And this is potentially turning our publishing environment into a better environment for customers with a higher service level. And it drives interest, of course. And so the shop signposting is not the only thing. I think within our publishing partnerships and the way that they operate, there are a plethora of watermarks, little logos, taglines and so on, that sort of separates or clarifies that what content is commercial and what content is like purely editorial.
And just back to these for a moment. If people want to go and have a look at these shops in real life, that's just tell us where they are. That's InStyle in which country?
In Germany, InStyle.
Germany.
L also Germany.
Germany.
Dagens Nyheter is dn.se. Okay. dn.se is operating Tipser behind Paywall, so it's a loyalty, the loyalty part of the business.
Yeah.
would probably have to be a subscriber to access it.
Okay, fabulous. That's great. People can go and have a look at those. We have a question related to this, relating to a brand that we spoke about in our preparation call, actually. This is from John Wilpers. Thank you very much. A reminder, if you want to submit your questions, please do so at the bottom of the screen. John is asking, on the ethical point, how do you feel about things like Wirecutter at the New York Times and The Strategist at New York Magazine? Each provides links to Amazon to buy. I don't know if they make money from each sale. They do, John. But I imagine they do. Does this relationship color the reader's perception? But isn't it a sensible way to help consumers and make money?
I think those two examples are super exciting. I think specifically the Wirecutter is super exciting from what I know about the Wirecutter, having met with people there quite a few times. They have a super clear separation between the content production or the reviews that they make, because I guess they're mostly into reviews, product reviews and product comparisons.
Yeah.
So as far as I know, there is a what do you call it, waterproof door basically between the content production team and the monetization team. The monetization team is something that happens when the content is produced. So there's a monetization team that goes out looking for the most appropriate affiliate links, the ones that pay the best, I guess. And then they place them in sort of connection with the content. This works tremendously well to some extent. Also to our knowledge, and I think this was even in the press early 2020, if I'm not wrong, that Amazon decided to cut down on their affiliate commissions. I think everyone has heard about that. And we had the same situation with Zalando in Europe 2.5 years ago, roughly, I think, where they basically decided that, okay, so affiliate marketing today is not bringing us as much as we wish, or it's simply the situation that both Zalando in Europe and Amazon in the US, they're so big that they've started creating gravity. Basically, they don't need the affiliate marketing to the same extent. So they cut down on the commissions paid. And I think that, if I'm not wrong, someone probably has a better understanding of this than me, but the figures that I've heard is that within consumer electronics, for instance, they slashed it with roughly 50%. And if you're Wirecutter and who made that question, whomever noticed basically that most of the links are Amazon, you can probably guess for yourself that the Wirecutter took a pretty heavy blow. Because they were putting too many eggs in one basket. So maybe they would have benefited from a paywall, probably not, or they would have benefited from being more in control of the transactions.
Fantastic. We have another question here from Anastasia Flegel. Thank you, Anastasia, for your question. Let me see if I'm understanding this correctly. She says, hello, are other magazine collaborations planned? In other words, do you have other new business in the pipeline? We'd love to work with all Birder magazines. It would be nice to get in touch with other magazines via Tipster too.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Yeah, we're growing pretty fast at this moment. So Europe is our home market. Germany is our primary market in terms of volume currently, but we have we're taking on the US, UK right now, and we are this is probably going ahead of things, but we're very soon live in the US with our first magazine. So but let us get back to that exactly what and when. Well, or reach out and maybe we can give
watch this space. And Anastasia, if you want to know more about when and where Tipster is expanding, subscribe to the FIPP newsletter and then you'll find out straight away.
Oh yeah, FIPP newsletter.
We'll cover it in there. You mentioned it earlier, and I just want to go back to that a little bit. So it is a concern when media companies sign up to you, as we're talking about new business, about the need for clear signposting and separation of these two activities. It is something that media companies are proactively talking to you about then.
A lot. Yeah, for sure. And this is always a topic whenever we set up a collaboration. Tipster is first and foremost a tech company, and the technology we deliver, we can deliver the technology as a pre-configured front-end element, basically something that you just embed into your content, and then there it is. But but to be honest, most of our customers, they maybe start with that solution, the sort of the stuff that we have designed that just renders the way we think it should render. But the further the collaboration goes, the more we're going from just proving the fundamental points into optimizing businesses, the more nativeness is of course developed and designed around these. The more about the own signposts, the own design, the sort of the brand connectivity and the sort of media brand's own branding of this experience. Because after all, Tipster is the enabler here we're the enabler of commerce. That's like how we like to see it. And it's really something when we can sort of divide the work that is being done, that those that are specialists in engagement and in content production and in making things look beautiful, interesting, informative, they should be doing that. We're to some extent we're a bit boring working with the transactions. We're a gearbox basically, but we have gathered a piece of information or two during the years that sort of tells us a bit about how do we communicate this? How is it likely to look to be converting better and so on?
Yeah, absolutely. Axel, throughout this year, or throughout the last 12 months, we've been talking an enormous amount about the importance of people and how it's really people that help you deliver strategy and culture change and all those things that we need to do. When we're thinking about e-commerce, what are the skill sets that are required for this? What kind of person do you need to find in an organization to enable an e-commerce strategy? And crucially, where do they sit? Do they sit in the editorial team, in the commercial team, in the marketing team? What's your experience of that so far?
I think in almost every project that we run that is sort of close to the traditional publishing industry, so I mean news publishing, niche publishing, magazine publishing, and so on, the teams are new. They're basically new teams with new skill sets. However, there is a lot of knowledge, obviously, inherited from the editorial teams, because they know how to write smashing content and to do amazing images. But in most of the cases, the teams are new. But I think what sort of separates the successful ones from the maybe less successful ones is when the team is dedicated towards building an e-commerce or actually in the end an enhanced customer experience, rather than just building content with a bit of commerce to it. So the most successful cases and collaborations that we do run, partnerships that we do run, they are based on the foundation of, there's a management group or even a board that has taken a decision that we need to venture into this area, for the simple reasons that we have to start owning the transaction. We have to start owning the interaction with our customers. We're sending them away for nearly nothing today. And this is not the way you build a recurring customer base. So the decisions are high-level strategic decisions, and they are today they are super central in running a media company. And in the past, I think we've seen all the trends of this. We've seen all the big players within the media industry investing in marketplaces. They invest in the classified ads space. They invest in the price comparison space. They invest in the product discovery space, and so on. All sorts of referral sites. If not, it's insurances, it's automotive, it's real estate, it's consumer goods, and so on. Discounts, etc., etc. The thing is that they haven't been able to tie it together. So it's almost as if the old strategy was that, well, the content production is kind of hopeless. Let's switch into something else. But maybe it's the sort of the birth of a new hope, to paraphrase. Isn't that a Star Wars reference again?
Yeah, we're having a Star Wars day today.
But I think we can start seeing a little bit of more connectivity between those two again, saying that, hey, if we look at it, the whole marketplace business is great, but there are a lot of players and a lot of pure play professionals within that world. We're actually quite good at producing content here in the media house we operate, or the if we're a publisher. It would be really, really sad if we just gave up that tradition, that knowledge, that the competence that has been built after years and years and years, to switch into referral links to insurance companies instead. And then on top of that, I think it's like a philosophical, or this sounds maybe too bold, but it's like it's almost like a moral obligation that we can't just discontinue producing quality media because referrals to financial institutes and betting sites is the better payoff. At this moment. So it starts, I think, tying together. Some people have started discovering how it works. Some people have started making money of it, but it's still super early on. But this is the bet we took 10 years ago, that this is our field that we're going to work in. So no one's happier than me seeing that things are moving, although it has taken a bit of time for sure.
So we don't stretch the content to match the commerce, and crucially, in terms of that person, they need to be embedded in the heart of the business, central to the strategy, because it's such a crucial part. They don't need to be some kind of rogue one sitting somewhere else. Okay, super, good. Let's move on then to something that publishers on this call will want to see, which is examples of success. And you've gathered 3 examples here of companies doing this well, which I'd like you to talk us through. Karine, thank you very much for your question. We'll come to that in a moment after these examples of success. So, Axel, go for it and talk us through this first one here.
This is basically one of our favorite scopes. So we have a perfectly clear example of embedded commerce here. So I referred to this a few minutes ago. This is basically a review on a cookbook. There are thousands, if not tens of thousands, of reviews on books in this Aftonbladet. It's Sweden's biggest news outlet, or the biggest news outlet of the Nordics. So they have thousands or tens of thousands of reviews of cookbooks and books in general. We can make those books or those articles or reviews actionable simply by placing a book, buyable book, within that context or that content. And it's something that is, I think it's a description of how relevance works, how contextual relevance works. So what could be more relevant than enabling the book that is being reviewed to be sold? So this is like one of my favorite examples. And Aftonbladet is a relatively new user of Tipster, and this is probably one of the first cases that they did. It essentially took them 3 minutes to embed the product in the article and make the article interactive, so to say. And I think this was a matter of hours that they sold 300 books with 3 minutes of work. So this is something that I'm particularly proud of, that it doesn't really take a lot of long-term coding or long-term developing to make a small proof of concept in a very, very understandable way.
Okay, let's move on to the second example, which is L.de. Talk us through that.
This is almost like the opposite from Aftonbladet. L is one of the most, or if not the most, well-known publishing brand within fashion and lifestyle. And the way that L works with e-commerce is that it first and foremost does quality content on quality products. And the quality products, they are not just random quality products. They are, carefully curated products that are deemed to fit the audience of L particularly well. So the message that the commercial editors of L can come up with here is that, we have carefully selected a product that we, by studies and experience, can tell will match your preferences, dear audience. And this is how we present it. In some cases, it's with a discount. I think this one was with a discount. Probably it looks like it, but it's really about actually not matching content and commerce. It's about building content on commerce, basically.
Yep, fantastic. A second good example, and then a third one here from EN.
This is also one of the topics that we were in on. So reader loyalty, basically. The whole concept of you're not able to buy these products unless you're a logged in user or a logged in subscriber of Dagens Nyheter. Dagens Nyheter is I think the second biggest news outlet in Sweden. It's the biggest daily news publisher in Sweden. They have a big reader base or subscriber base. That subscriber base can access these kinds of products, but the non-subscribers can also see these kinds of offerings, but they can only access them once they're subscribers. And I think this is a brilliant, very simple example of how you can work with sort of anti-churn methods, basically, towards your subscriber base, and how you can drive new subscribers to participate or take part of these kinds of offerings. And I can't really see what's the level of the discount there, but given the price is red, I guess it's a considerable discount as well offered on these headphones.
Yes, it looks like about 25% off or something. That's really good. Yeah. Fabulous. Okay, let's come back to me. There we go. So there's some examples of companies that are doing it well, but what are the risks if you do it badly?
Yeah, I think the risk that is most commonly discussed is basically the risk of being perceived as biased. If you're the fear of what if my audience start thinking that my whole content is skewed or biased in some way. However, I think that sort of clarity about the offering and transparency quite effectively safeguards us from that kind of risk. So as up until now, at least, we have seen very, very little kind of negative feedback saying that, hey, you're trying to fool me into buying something, or you're upwriting a product that actually sucks or something like that. Because these publishers, they spend their lives and days trying to build confidence, building trust. They're not going to ruin it over selling some crap that they know is broken at delivery. It's much more caution surrounding the whole game than that. But the other risk, what's the actual real risk is with publisher not taking this opportunity, just sort of agreeing to the fact that, okay, monetization, that's something that actually ultimately happens outside of my realm or outside of my network. And some publishers would turn to us or other companies that sort of offer services on reader monetization and say, hey, we want this product too. We see that our business colleagues have it, so we want it too. And then they are possibly buying the product without committing resources or committing a team to it or committing a strategy to it. And when you do that, you're basically going to end up in a situation where you don't make any money, but you probably pay us a lot for using the platform. And that's not a good deal for them and actually not for us either. So I think that commitment is probably the biggest risk that every publisher is at right now. And in the end, it's about selecting your monetization strategy. And as you mentioned, or someone mentioned, you probably have to have a few, 3, 4, 5 monetization methods. So if you select content commerce to be one of the monetization methods, make sure you don't treat it, with the back of your hand. Make sure you treat it as one of your substantial future revenue drivers.
Absolutely. Great advice. I'm going to come back to you in a minute to give us your 3 principles of monetization for e-commerce. But before I do that, we've had a couple of questions here from the audience which we're going to take. So a good one here from Karine Hakan. Apologies if I'm mispronouncing your name. Hi, thank you for your insights. Generally speaking, affiliate marketing is an internet sales strategy which is cheap to implement. Embedded commerce is great, but it expensive to implement for small businesses because of the monthly fees and the high number of unique visitors required. Do you think that the conditions will change in the upcoming years and that it will be more accessible to small businesses? Great question.
That's a beautiful question, and I totally sort of chime in on that. Affiliate marketing is cheap to implement, and it's actually considered to be cheaper than something like Tipster to implement, simply because we're more demanding a strategy, so to say, and an execution on that. But to answer the question, yes, I think that this whole concept will be so much more accessible, and within our strategy lies, being able to provide a product that is much more self-serviceable, much more benefiting of the platform aspects. I mean, we're working with, on one end of our platform, we're working with thousands of merchants basically, and on the other end of the platform, we're working with dozens or if not more publishers. The fact that we have thousands of merchants, might make us look like a big platform where you can pick and select everything, but it's not really the case. We have to constantly build up those two ends to make them meet at the center of a platform. It could be ours, it could be another platform, but let's hope it's ours. When we get to that point, we have better opportunities in providing very, very self-serviceable solutions. At this time, Tipster is maybe a bit more like a software as a service. It's something that has to be operated by someone. There is a fair chance that future-wise, the Tipster will have a much higher level of automation, meaning that we can provide the service much cheaper, but also possibly with slightly lower conversion numbers, which is perfectly fine because the reach will be so much better ultimately. So yeah, I think I can even commit to that. Tipster is becoming almost day by day a more self-serviceable, more accessible platform.
There you go. There's a commitment there from one of the founders that it will do. It will be possible for small business. His team are wincing in the background, but that's fine. Another question here. This one from Nicholas, or is it Nicola? I'm not sure. Langelier, thank you very much. Regular viewer that you are. Thank you for coming on again. How does L actually manage the orders it receives?
Oh, they don't. Luckily, that's our job. So the basically looking at Tipster as a platform, we in some cases we call ourselves a marketplace as a service. So essentially, what Tipster does is all the boring stuff that happens behind the curtain, so to say. So what you see at L, that's the front end, that's the consumer interaction, that's the ability to show a product, to transact on a product, and to perform the payment basically, and communicate around that transaction. What happens in the back end is essentially the same thing that happens in any marketplace. Tipster pulls the order data in, places the order data with the fulfillment center of that specific product. The fulfillment center delivers the product to the end consumer, and hopefully everyone is happy, and we're splitting out the payments. But in the event the end consumer is unhappy, returns the product, which they do, and returns are common. It can happen in 50% of the cases. No, not really. It's a very common thing. So the product goes back. The consumer sends the product back with this like pre-printed return slip to the warehouse or fulfillment center that sent the product. We reverse the payment, and the consumer gets the money back. So it's the transactional flow is e-commerce all the way. Or marketplace all the way. However, it's the front end, the interactivity, and the distributability that's the sort of uniqueness, and that makes it so apt for content commerce.
So there you go. That's your answer, Nicholas. Tipster does all the work for you. What more could you want?
Was that another commitment from me now? We do all the work from us.
Do all the work. We've made two big commitments today, which is great to hear. Fantastic. We're nearly out of time, Axel. So I'm going to ask you to close by just giving us your kind of recap, three key principles of e-commerce monetization. So let me put those up and you can talk them through.
Yeah. And I think that this is sort of the way of getting started. I think that most publishers, they already have bonds with advertisers and merchants that could easily be turned from just ad buyers into e-commerce partners. to our experience, that's just a phone call or an email away. And that's such a very good way to start working with e-commerce in your context. Because most probably your advertisers, they're advertising within your ecosystem because they think that your reader base is the same as their customer base. How about allowing them to sell their stuff and acquire the customers through your ecosystem? It's probably the easiest pitch in the world, I'd say. Secondly, and that's something that we've been talking about a lot, be super transparent about your monetization. And to be honest, the more transparent you are about the fact that you're now running a store, the more likely it is that your audience is going to feel educated and actually act upon your offerings. And thirdly, this is about creating a service that adds value to your publication. So don't look upon commercial initiatives as something dirty, something that you have to sort of put in the shades, or something that you refuse to take responsibility over, or something that you don't want too tightly connected with your brand. Look upon it the other way instead and say that, we want to provide you a better service. We want to be your one-stop shop for inspiration and for accessing whatever we inspire you to access, or whatever you feel like accessing. So we want to provide you with that whole experience. And by sort of starting to think this way, instead of thinking that there is a watertight, door between this commerce and the content, you're slowly turning yourself into an arena for interactivity and for deeper customer engagement and for deeper customer insights and ultimately deeper relationship with the customers, and they will be recurring to your platform.
Fantastic. Great summary. Axel, thank you so much for being part of today's webinar. Really fascinating insights. Absolutely brilliant. I'm sure we'll do really well on YouTube as well with this again. A reminder to everybody to download the State of Content and Commerce report that we've been talking about today. The link is there in the chat box. Thank you to all of you for watching. A quick thing, a reminder to do the editorial survey if you've not already done that. There will also be a survey going out asking you to comment on this session. We'd love you to fill that in and tell us what you think. On Twitter, you can go and learn more about Tipster, at their handle WeAreTipster. And Axel, just tell everybody how they can get in touch with you if they want to learn more.
Oh, they can reach out at axel@tipster.com.
Very easy. AXEL@tipster.com. So
yes, that's it.
And please do go and contact him if you want to. On Twitter, also, you can follow me at FIPP CEO and FIPP at FIPP World. Don't forget to sign up for the newsletter. The next session will be in 2 weeks' time. We will be talking about virtual events. There is a link to sign up in the follow-up email from today. Don't forget you can watch this session again on YouTube on our channel FIPP World. But for the time being, thank you very much to everybody for watching, and we will see you in a couple of weeks' time. Goodbye.
Thank you so much, James, everyone watching, and FIPP.